Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. A Thursday edition of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, jam-packed show. We'll talk with our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald, later in the show. Our betting insider, Chelsea Messenger. We've got a Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction. We've got Jad Chambers back taking your calls at 869-1240. Glad to have Jad back. You can find us, of course, on our video streams, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all available for you. You can comment there. We'll have some giveaways for you in the show today as well. Here we go, Tommy. Thursdays are crazy this time of the year. No different here today.
Yeah, a lot to get to on the show today. You mentioned all the guests we have, and then just all the major storylines. The NBA playoffs continue. The Heat and Celtics game 1. That was crazy. So much to dive into today. I'm looking forward to it.
So we'll have our Wichita Hall of Fame induction. We'll have Chelsea Messenger. We'll have Fitz. Yeah, let's start with basketball so we can get to it here. And that was, that was a bit of a surprise. Miami just going to keep surprising everybody. Celtics Heat, they played plenty of times. I didn't realize, Tommy, it just hasn't dawned on me how often the Celtics have been in this situation. The core of this team's been to the Eastern Conference Finals 5 times in the last 7 seasons. 5 out of 7 years they've reached this point. And Miami gets here. They took them to 7 games last year. So should we really be surprised that Miami went into Boston last night and beat the Celtics in game 1 of this series? And does it say anything to the overall series? Or is this one, like I think we may see in the Western Conference Finals, going to be a series of, 6, 7 individual games as much as it is, a series? Because I feel like that's what we're going to get here. Night in, night out, different things happening. Miami winning game 1 makes me think we are going to get a really good series out of this one too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a dogfight. And really because of how gritty Miami is, they just don't go away. And we've seen that throughout the course of the entire playoffs, where they've been counted out in every series they've played in, right? Nobody thinks that they belong. Nobody thinks that they should be there. And all they do, led by Jimmy Butler, is go out and never quit. Butler had another awesome shooting night. I think if you didn't know any better, you didn't watch the NBA regularly, and you just watched Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, you would think he's the best player in the NBA because of the way that he just takes over in the playoffs. So I think that that's a big part of it also. The other thing that I think is going to be really important with this entire series is how Boston can play down the stretch in, future games in this series. They did not play well in the final couple of minutes of this game. I mean, they had the opportunity to
really
take it back over.
Half.
Yeah. And, there were too many turnovers, just poor shooting. Jason Tatum, who I think that we could argue has been one of the best players in the playoffs, didn't have a good time down the stretch at all, turned the ball over a couple of different times. So I think that's going to be a big question mark too, is when you get into crunch time in this series between these two teams, can Boston keep control? Can they hang on to the ball? Can they shoot the ball well? Can they defend well? They didn't last night, but can they do that in future games?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they can. I think that roster to roster, they're as good as any team that remains in the postseason. I just think Miami is good, right? Like, they're really well coached. They are as good a collection of players as far as like a team goes, right? Like not talent necessarily, or at this stage of their career, or anything like that, but it feels like, Miami for a while now has felt like the Spurs to me during so many of those Spurs years. Now the Spurs, weren't waltzing in as 8 seeds, but where everybody just plays their role so perfectly, right? Like where everybody's bought in. It's just there, and there's not a lot of, drama with it or whatever. Jimmy Butler, when the lights shine the brightest, is phenomenal. He's phenomenal in a very different way, right? Like, he's not out there making it rain. He was 2 of 4 from 3 last night. How often, do you see guys his size play that style? Like, it's really interesting. He's 6'7", so he's not like a big by any means, not by NBA standards, certainly, but he's not out there as a sharpshooter, like some 3-point specialist. He's a grinder, man, and he's awesome. He went 9 of 10 from the line, and he's great. And everybody else just sort of does what they need to do, and here they are. And I do think that gives us some indication that this will be a close series. Look, I think there are going to be games in the series, 1, 2, whatever it is, where Boston flexes and beats Miami pretty healthily. But it doesn't really matter now because Boston retook home court advantage. And like the Western Conference Finals appear to be trending, I think we're going to get a deep series, and I think they're going to be hard games to predict. I think they're going to be hard games to read because Jason Tatum, not in the second half, but, his overall body of work last night was pretty good. It wasn't good in the second half, but Miami found a way to win despite a pretty good game from him. We saw it in the other series last night. Anthony Davis and LeBron James were great. Denver still won, right? Jokic was fantastic, and Denver shot the lights out, and the Lakers had it down to, those last handful of possessions. So I think we're going to get 2 good series. I'm actually really excited about it. I did not see much of the beginning of this game because I was unfortunately watching the Rangers blow a lead to the Braves to lose that series.
Let's go.
But I did, it sort of bounce around. It's been an interesting dynamic for me because this is the first time in a while with the recent struggles of both the Rangers and the Royals that I'm like tuning in nightly to baseball games. And man, I missed it. I got to tell you, like, you just don't have to think about it. Like, what am I going to watch? What's it? Nope. Just the Rangers. What time do the Rangers play? That's pretty much been my TV experience when I can get to it after kids are settled and all those things. But I did catch, the portion of this game where Boston really started to blow it. And it's interesting. I still cannot figure out how Miami's doing this. They're an 8 seed. We don't know anything about their roster. Like, we know Jimmy Butler and we know Bam Adebayo, and
Adebayo
Kyle
played really well
Lowry's
too.
Kyle
Adebayo was
Lowry's
really
on
efficient.
this team, right? Like, it's just weird. Like, it's fine. We know these players. This isn't like the same thing as the Spurs exercise we did yesterday, where we don't know legitimately like any of their players. But it still doesn't feel like a team that should be in this position, and they are, and it's awesome because it's a cool, and that's the thing too. Like Miami, Boston, and the Lakers. Like, could you ever root for Denver more? Miami, Boston, and the Lakers. Like, haven't they had enough in the NBA, those 3 franchises? And these are totally different versions of some of the great teams there, and yet they're still in these positions. Could there ever been more of a reason to root for one team over the other 3? Let's go, Denver. Come on, spice this thing up. Let's mix it up a little bit.
You know what the only constant is from those past Miami teams to today is Eric Spoelstra. Like, that's literally the only constant, right? I mean,
well, Pat Riley, I mean, just
right.
bigger picture in the NBA. Like, those 3 franchises are 3 of the most successful NBA franchises that there are, as far as winning titles and being in position to.
With Miami, as far as like we don't know much about them, I think that's true. But the one thing I do know about them after watching them throughout the playoffs, and then especially in game 1 last night, they're damn tough. They are tough, and they sort of embody what Jimmy Butler brings to the table. Like they all kind of have that identity. They're not going to go away. They're grinders. They're battlers. It's not always pretty. I saw one of Jimmy Butler's dagger threes last night that wasn't a pretty shot at all. Like, kind of went up awkwardly. The ball rattled around and then dropped through. And I'm sure people know what I'm talking about. That one particular shot from him last night. It wasn't a thing of beauty. It wasn't a work of art, but it worked. He made the shot, and that helped propel Miami to the victory. That's Miami. That's what the Heat do. That they don't do it, in a way that is incredibly flashy, and they're not relying on, huge big time superstars and free agent signers and things like that. They're literally going out there and they're taking care of business behind Jimmy Butler. And, I think that while we can talk about, how everybody has counted Miami out, I think the other storyline is, do the Celtics have a real reason to worry as the series moves on? I still think, and I'm sure that collectively most people think, that Boston will win this series and go to the finals, but they've been far from perfect. And last night was a big example of that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's do it this way. If you had to pick a winner of this series, who are you going to pick right now?
I'll still take Boston. Yeah, I'll still take Boston, I think. I mean, I think it's going to be a dogfight. It's not going to be as easy of a cakewalk as I think some people thought this series would be for the Celtics. I'll still take them. But man, I certainly wasn't overly impressed, especially in the second half and late in the game. Boston had chances to get right back in it and ultimately win, and they weren't able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what I would say to that. I don't know how I would answer that. I think I agree with you. But I've got to look back at this postseason, right? Boston struggled with Philadelphia. Maybe they shouldn't have, right? Atlanta, they struggled with a little bit. Maybe they shouldn't have. Should Atlanta have won 2 games in that series? Should Philly have won 3? I think Miami's, more cutthroat than Atlanta or Philadelphia. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe we're giving Boston too much credit. Maybe that's the issue at hand here. And so
they're the 1 seed. How can we be giving them too much credit?
Aren't they the 2 seed? I think they're the 2 seed.
Well, regardless, they're one of the top seeds in the in the entire deal. I mean, I don't think that we're overvaluing them. I'm not sure they have been. I think that they've just disappointed. Like I don't know.
Remember, Miami already beat the 1 seed, who seemed like a heavy favorite to win the title this year in Milwaukee. So I don't know that I would take Boston, and that's great news, because it makes this series like the Western Conference Finals. You got to watch it, right? Like if Miami's capable of doing what they did to Milwaukee, isn't Miami capable of just about anything? Right? Like, aren't they? I mean, Miami went and beat Milwaukee in 5 games. So who's better, Milwaukee or Boston? Well, this year, Milwaukee was better. And so, I think it's because they played the Knicks in the second round, and that was probably the least interesting series, to outside of, people geographically, the least interesting series that we had. Maybe we just are sleeping a little bit on the fact that Miami already went through the 1, right? And they're 1-0 on the 2. Well, I think that Milwaukee was better than Boston this year, probably. So why not Miami, right? They've done this so many times. And then it becomes, can Miami win a title? Well, if they can get through Boston, yeah, I mean, I think they could probably get through LA. Or could you imagine, Tommy, if we have a 7 versus an 8 seed in the NBA Finals?
That would be insane.
That's a very real possibility. Has there ever been any postseason in pro sports? And I'm asking this, I don't know the answer, but where we've had those 2 high a seed play each other in the final. I would guess maybe in hockey, there's probably been something like that, because Stanley Cup playoffs, are conducive to those kinds of things. Almost certainly not in the NFL. And in baseball,
have we had a couple wild card teams maybe in baseball? I mean, that could potentially be something.
Probably so. Baseball, I don't even honestly count, because the baseball postseason's so isolated in a lot of ways. But I don't know. This is an interesting postseason. I think we're going to get 2 great conference. I was worried about this series. I was, and I don't know why. And that's Miami's thing, right? Like, why were we worried about this? They rolled Milwaukee. And so why can't they compete in this series? And shame on me. I don't know if everybody else felt that way, but Miami looks great.
You know what? I think that also, if they are able to beat Boston in this entire series, and then they've taken down the 1 in Milwaukee, taken down the 2 in Boston, honestly, I think the storyline is less about Milwaukee and Boston and more about Miami at that point.
It is. I agree.
And think of the fallout in Milwaukee. I mean, they fired Mike Budenholzer because they lost to the Heat. I don't know. I'm not sure that would happen in Boston necessarily, if Miami beats them. But, I think that at that point, if you're a Bucks fan and the Heat go and beat the Celtics in the series, you're like, man, maybe we shouldn't have overreacted and fired our coach because Miami might just be better than what everybody thought that they were. So I don't know. I mean, I think that that's got some interesting narratives that will follow it if Miami can keep this up and ultimately beat the Celtics.
Yeah. I think I'm starting to lean Miami now, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to overreact to game one. I got to see a little more. I got to see a little more basketball. I'm happy to just sit back and enjoy these series and not try to predict them, because that's one thing we did call for, at least in the Western Conference Finals. Like, let's just enjoy it, because it who knows, right? We got stars all over the court, some of the best players in the world. The level of basketball is sky high right now in these series. It's funny. We're so used to college basketball, right? And I'm, just sort of reading and doing everything on the game. And it's like Jason Tatum's just getting railed for 3 second-half turnovers. I'm like, 3 second-half turnovers? Like 3 second-half turnovers? Like that's not that big a deal. But in the NBA at this level,
yeah,
it is. It is.
They were
and
crucial
so
turnovers.
We're
crucial
so
times.
used to college basketball where it's like, oh man, this guy had, fewer than 5 turnovers. That's a great game. That's a great game for but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like my brain has so been wired to the college game that I see things like that, and it gives me like a double take. Like, we're gonna kill this guy over 3 second-half turnovers, but yeah, they were in key moments. I get it. Just interesting how that's all changed. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Our betting insider Chelsea Messenger rejoins us after a week off. Curious to see what's on her mind in the world of sports betting right now. We'll get her thoughts on a variety of things. We'll come back. We'll have a Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction later in this hour. Our K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald joins us top of the next hour, and then we'll open things up a little later in the show for your calls on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. All kinds of fun today coming on the show for you. We haven't given anything away this week in a while. Let's give away some WinSurge vouchers. Ticket vouchers, good for any home game. You can give them. You can take them in 2 or 4, whatever you prefer, and you can pick the game courtesy of Sports Daily and KFH. IHOP hotline 869-1240. First caller, Jad, will get us a winner. We'll be back. Chelsea Messenger joins the show next.
Host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all of the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Also, be sure to check out the Daily Tip podcast for more of Chelsea Messenger analysis. Just search BetMGM wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, welcome back in Sports Daily. Chelsea Messenger joins us here on the program. Congratulations to Mark, by the way, won those Win Surge tickets. Chelsea, how are you after a week off? How's everything in your world?
Yeah, it's good. Last week had a sick kid on my hands, and you guys know that can be a lot to deal with. So we've had a tough going for some of the holidays. For Easter, we had pink eye, and for Mother's Day, we had double ear infection. So hopefully next holiday will be a little bit easier.
We've been there. That's what Mother's Day is all about, right? Taking care of sick kids. That's good stuff. All right, let's attack this, Chelsea. So this is an interesting week. You've got 2 NBA conference finals. You've got all the baseball. You've got hockey playoffs, and you have a PGA championship that is getting underway today. How do you attack a week like this with so much variety out there?
Yeah, I'm mostly focused on the NBA postseason and also the daily baseball slate. I am a baseball person, so I've always got my daily baseball bet. Not much of a hockey gal. I like hockey, but I just don't have much of an edge on it because the depth of knowledge just really isn't there for me. PGA Championship, I do have a few bets pending, but I know that one has already teed off, so I feel like I need to peek at the results before I blast my plays to make sure they're not losing. So let's stick to basketball and baseball if we could.
Yeah, let's do it.
I can. Let me jump in there real quick. So I just have one quick PGA Championship question for you before we jump into the NBA and baseball. I know we talked about this briefly when the Masters came around. I love betting golf. In your mind, is it better to look at value for an outright winner? Or in your mind, in the way that you attack it, is it more of like trying to find guys that are in the top 10 or top 20?
Oh, I'm super conservative when it comes to golf because here's the thing about outright. You can have a great read on a golfer. He can have an amazing weekend, but if he finishes second, you win $0. So maybe you do, a few sprinkles on outrights, but also put some money on some other things just in case, your one guy doesn't finish first overall. So for me, what I'm on, even though I just heard Brooks Koepka had a wayward shot off the tee, I'm on a couple of live guys to finish in the top 20. Brooks Koepka and DJ, both are at even money or close to it. Brooks Koepka, even money to finish in the top 20. DJ, who just won an event on the live tour, is plus 120 to finish in the top 20. If these guys were still on the PGA tour and playing the way that they're playing, I feel like the numbers would be way juicier for both of these guys. And also big, strong guys, long off the tee. I think their game sets up well for this course. It's going to be playing pretty difficult and plays to the power hitters.
When you talk about the NBA, which you did, and we saw game 1 last night where Miami continues to do this thing that they're doing, which is knock off the 1 seed, win game 1 in Boston. They come in. I look at the lines for game 2 right now, and they're 8.5-point dogs. 8.5-point dogs, which I believe is a bigger dog. That's exactly where the line was yesterday. That seems like Miami with a hammer, doesn't it? Like, I don't get it. I've had such a hard time with the NBA postseason. They seem so unpredictable to me.
Who, the Heat? I feel like you can predict them
Everything.
pretty clearly now because they keep getting points and they keep knocking off opponents. I think it's because they were sandbagging during most of the season and had terrible numbers. I think the one metric that is kind of surprising is they were such bad shooters during the regular season. And you look at their lineup and they have like half their roster seems like they're 3-point shooters. Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, even back when they had Tyler Hero. So it just didn't really make sense because last year they were the best 3-point shooting team in the league. And now we're starting to see them revert back to those ways where they're hitting threes. Hit almost 50%, I believe, of their threes last night against the Celtics. So the Celtics are going to have to make some kind of adjustments because a lot of those threes were unguarded threes. And it's not like they were even shooting these threes in traffic. They have really good looks. So here's the other X factor. the coaching aspect. Joe Mazzulla is not on the same level as Eric Spoelstra, despite having a huge talent advantage with 2 All-NBA players in the starting 5. 6th man of the year coming off the bench in Malcolm Brogdon, and also one of the best defenders in the league in Marcus Smart. Eric Spoelstra is using the rotation. He is using, his timeouts better. So I think that's where the Heat have a leg up. It's not just Jimmy Butler. I think the organization as a whole and the coaching mismatch is a big one.
Chelsea, in the other series, in the other conference finals, the Lakers and the Nuggets, is there a way that you think that would be smart to try to bet Nikola Jokic? I know his point total, the line right now is around 28.5. He's definitely, basically a walking triple double every time he comes out on the court. So is there a smart way to bet him, or is there just not a lot of value because the books think he's going to do a lot anyway?
It's really tough on star players because Nikola Jokic is not sneaking up on anybody. But I will say this. He had a historic first half in that first game against the Lakers. And you noticed, I'm sure, in the second half that the rotation for the Lakers was different. And they put Hachimura in there, and they had AD coming in and shadow coverage, and it kind of slowed down Jokic, not completely. But still, I think the way you play it is maybe look at other players. Maybe Jamal Murray has a bigger night tonight, because one thing about Nikola Jokic is even when he is not scoring points, he is very good at dishing the ball to other players and getting other guys open. So his assist, it's set at 10.5, which is bananas for a big man to have a line that high. I think he still goes over. I think it's the other guys that kind of fill up the stat sheet tonight.
All right, let's go to baseball, which I know is your bread and butter this time of year. I know something that you love. Any trends you're seeing in Major League Baseball that have been very fruitful, or anything more specific into a day like today that's looking appetizing for you?
Yeah, the Baltimore Orioles as favorites this year are a blistering 19-3 today. They are favored against the LA Angels. And also, the Orioles have been money makers at home this season, 15-7 and straight up. And also, one of the best teams in baseball. Once again, people do not want to give the Orioles credit, but they have the second best record in the American League, right behind the Red Hot Rays. So I'll be on the Orioles today against the Angels. Also, they're very good at hitting lefties. 5th in baseball in WRC plus against left-handed pitching. The Angels are throwing a lefty. So let's go Orioles.
Well, Chelsea, I'll take every opportunity that I can to mention that I'm a massive Atlanta Braves fan. Jacob is a huge Texas Rangers fan. My Braves took 2 of 3 this week against the Rangers. And I've been listening to you. I know you mentioned before the way that the Braves have performed when they're underdogs, which it hasn't happened very often, but I've tried to keep an eye on that. Are there other teams in Major League Baseball that you're seeing that sort of any kind of nuggets with, other teams where when they're underdogs, they're performing well, or is it mainly the Braves?
I think the Rays are in that boat because we've seen it in this series against the Mets. And last night was kind of a tough luck loss for the Rays. They lost in extra innings. But still, the fact that the Mets have been favored in both games of the series, and I get it when Justin Verlander's pitching, the Mets were minus 160, but still, the Rays are the best hitting team in baseball, the best overall team in baseball. So if you can get this team at a pick 'em price or an underdog, which I'm not sure which way this line has gone. Earlier this morning, they were minus 108, which is a very short underdog. But still, against this Mets team that's been, I don't want to call them the poverty Mets because they have such a big payroll. You can't really call them that. But they have been very disappointing this season. So I'll take the best team in baseball at basically a pick 'em price over the Mets today.
I want to jump back real quick, Chelsea. When you talk about the Orioles and how hot they are that's just an outright winner, right? Do you ever delve into the minus 1.5 portion, the spread portion of a baseball bet, or do you just stick to the money line?
Well, the trend against the Mets is play the other team on the plus 1.5, because I think going into last night, or I guess last night, they didn't cover the run line yet again. So they're now 1-11 on the run line in their last 12 games, which means even when they're winning games, they're not winning them by more than one run. So the Mets are a team to back the opposite side on the run line plus 1.5 if you can get, obviously if the Mets are favored.
All right, Chelsea, let's anything else today before we let you go? You've given us a couple. I've already hit the Orioles with you there on that one. Anything else, any player props, anything else in baseball to watch today or across the betting landscape?
There's one more play that it's not my favorite play, but I do have a strong lean towards. That's the over in the Cardinals and Dodgers game. Julio Urias has been the rock of the rotation for the Dodgers for most of the past few years. But his stuff has started to regress this year. And also, speaking of sandbagging, doesn't it feel like the Cardinals are kind of like the Miami Heat? At any moment, they can catch fire. And just traditionally, they find a way to put wins together. So I know they've had a tough start to the season, but at some point, that lineup's going to wake up. And we're starting to see it. When you have Nolan Arenado, when you have Paul Goldschmidt, when you have, all the guys in the lineup that they do, they have such a strong hitting lineup that I think the over's in play today. Also, same thing goes with the Dodgers. It's a team that's come on strong in the last month or so. Between all those bats, and especially since Adam Wainwright's pitching today, I know he is such a good career, but still he's getting up there. I think the Dodgers bats can scratch off a couple of runs. So over in the Cardinals and Dodgers.
All right, Chelsea, we appreciate it. Cross our fingers that we can all avoid sick kids for a little while. Always appreciate the insight and always appreciate you being here with us. Let's talk again next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was the host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider Calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Speaking of BetMGM, you can turn a loss into a win with BetMGM, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Place a one-game parlay wager with at least 4 legs on any MLB game. If all legs of the parlay hit but one, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $25. Just log into your account or download the app and sign up with BetMGM to get started. Then opt into the one-game parlay insurance promotion to receive up to $25 back in bonus bets if your parlay with 4 legs or more loses by just 1 leg. Only at BetMGM, the best place to bet on baseball. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager, Kansas only. New and existing customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Sports Daily coming right back. We'll induct the latest member of the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame next.
97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back into Sports Daily, everybody. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, Paul Savage joining us as we get ready for another Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction today. One that a lot of people are going to recognize, Mr. Savage, here with us.
We have royalty from Wichita State with us today. Randy Burns. Fellas, this is an amazing basketball player, played for Wichita State from 2001 to 2005. What a career at Wichita State he had. Fellas, he was the number 9 scorer of all time in the history of Wichita State basketball with 1,599 points. He's number 1 in three-point shooting with 248 made three-pointers. Number 15 in field goals with 511. Number 16 in free throws with 329 made. Number 6 with 115 games started. And number 10 in the history of this program with 3,395 minutes. Fellas, it is an honor indeed. One of the top 10 scorers in the history of Wichita State, Randy Burns. Randy, how are you? And my first question is, number 9 scorer with 1,599 points. Why can't you get one more point and get up and over 1,600?
I'm doing great. It's an honor. If I had known that I was 1 point away, maybe I would have drove to the lane one more time, tried to get to the line or something like that.
There you go. Jacob?
Randy, I love hearing from former Shockers that have been such a big part of the greatness of the program, and love getting you all's perspective on where things stand right now. How have you been with the new hire, the progress being made? Where are you at with the current state of Shocker basketball?
Well, I got a chance to see them play when they came down here and played against U of H. I got to see them a few times over the years, but I've just been rooting from afar. I'm always there with you guys in spirit. I've seen the success that's been going on since I left, and I've always felt like a big part of that. And so, it's always an honor and a pleasure to see something that I was a part of to help build. And, it's just a great thing.
Randy, I got to ask you here. So, playing at Wichita State when you did, playing under Mark Turgeon, I really feel like, and I was here in Wichita during that time, I remember what the program was like before you were there and before Mark Turgeon coached and all the great players that he brought in, and then the growth of the program during that time that you played and that Turgeon coached and the other guys were there. What does that mean to you, knowing that that era of Shocker basketball really helped turn the program around and, really laid the foundation for the way that Shocker basketball became?
Oh man, it's everything. It means a lot to me, like honestly and truly. When I look back at the story and how I was recruited there, and like you said, where the program was at before we got there, and just all the hard work we put in to try to turn the program around and to actually have that happen, it means a whole lot. It means a whole lot to me, and all of the players that played there with me as well. I'm sure it's a heck of a story from my perspective. I know that Coach Turgeon and Coach Boyle, Coach Roan, Coach Prelow, all of those coaches, like you said, we were like the first recruiting class. I think we had like 4 freshmen, 6 players overall. I was the least recruited out of I always like to throw that in there. That's a part of my story. I was the least recruited. I didn't play any AAU basketball. So for me, it's extra special to be able to go there and, kind of make my mark. And we all made our mark, and to really just be the foundation of something very special and to turning the program around, man, it means a whole lot. I really can't even put it in words. I always look back at that whole experience, and it's for it to come back around like this and to be able to make the Wichita Hall of Fame, man, that's just I'm lost for words sometimes.
Well, before you get too complimentary of the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame, I want you to know we've talked extensively with Jamar Howard about you. I've got stories that I'm not sure you want us to get out on the radio today. Okay, I'm joking. Jamar's stories were good. They were fun. But talk a little about some of your teammates. I mean, here you're playing with another top 10 scorer in the history of the Shocker basketball program, and Jamar Howard. But you had Jamar and some other teammates. Talk a little about the teammates that you felt especially good about, especially close to, and who you thought were especially important to the success your success while you were at Wichita State.
Man, everyone from top to bottom, actually, man, everybody has their own unique personality and what they brought to the team and what they brought to the table that I really appreciate. To start with Jamar, man, when I first met him, you know, he's just all energy, all smiles. He was the same every day, on the court, off the court, in the dorms. He made it fun. He was the hardest worker I had ever seen, the hardest player that I've ever seen. He was super athletic. He was amazing. When I first, like I said, I didn't play AAU basketball at all. So when I first, got a load of Jamar, I was blown away. He was running all day. He was playing great defense. He was just a different breed. He was a different breed. Jamar was. Paul Miller, Rob Campman, man, everybody. Who is either some other players, even the kids, the guys that redshirted. I know even after that, we had some players recruited that were from Houston that I knew, like PJ Cousinard, Karen Bradley. They all played an integral role in the development of how we did things in practice and how good we were able to become. The practices we had going to war, man, it was an experience that I obviously hadn't experienced again. It was just great. So I know Jamar stands out, even Deion Sherrill, like people that came in with me, they ended up transferring and stuff like that, but they all played a huge part in the development of us as Shockers. And man, I mean, I got stories. It's just crazy. On the court, off the court. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. My friend Nicholas Rogers came to Wichita State with me, and yeah, it was just a great experience. All of the players from top to bottom, they all had their played their part in it, and we all have special relationships. Jamie Sowers,
Randy, I want to
Freer Tolman, all of those players. I'm kind of losing names and losing track, but everybody.
I'll give you a chance to pinpoint one other thing then. I'm curious, as you look back to, Coke Arena and all the greatness of, being here and a part of the program, what is your favorite memory as a player, on the court type memory of being a Shocker?
Probably when we took down Creighton. They were ranked. It was probably our first time beating a ranked team when I was there. And I know Creighton had Kyle Korver. We all know he went on to have a great NBA career. But when we took him down and what do we move to? The arena that we had to move to the arena. I think it was my sophomore year. When we had the crowd storm the court, stuff like that. I can't really see another experience that was better than that, because we didn't actually get to make the tournament. We were in the NIT tournament. We made the NIT tournament, but when we beat Creighton, that meant a lot, and that was a real fun experience to have the fans storm the court. What was that? Was that Levitt Arena? No, I can't remember the name.
Paul,
of that
do you
arena.
know the answer to that? That was prior to my time here.
I think you're talking about Intrust Bank Arena, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, yeah, wherever it was a heck of an experience. I didn't play so well that game, but I remember the crowd storming the court and just being able to play against a ranked team and beat them, take them down at home. That was great.
Well, it's great having you on the show today, and it's great. I've got to get this squared around. As I've researched your career, I couldn't find any Hall of Fames that you're in at this point. Is this your first induction?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, you're going into the Wichita State Hall of Fame one of these days. I'm sure of that. There might be some others I know from your career, but you know something, Jacob, it's kind of cool. Tommy, it's kind of cool in a way. We're going to actually be Randy Burns' first Hall of Fame induction. That's pretty cool, if you ask me. And we've come to that part of the show, Randy, where it's time to induct you, and we will send you your plaque in the mail here, just not too far down the road. And but I want you to know how much it means to the city of Wichita to have had you in our presence for the time that we had you. And at this point, Randy, this is the part where we officially induct you. You have been elected, you have been nominated, and you are now inducted into the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame, and you have all the rights and privileges pertaining to such an honor. So with that being said, Randy Burns, it's an honor to induct you into the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations, my friend. You deserve this honor.
Oh, man, I really appreciate it. The pleasure's all mine. It's an honor. I thank everybody that nominated me, the whole city of Wichita, and it's just an honor, and to God be the glory.
Well, Randy, it's awesome. You've got a few listeners and viewers on our video stream telling you congratulations as well. Once a shocker, always a shocker, right? We appreciate the time, and we've been happy to do this here on this program.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate everybody. Appreciate the congratulations, and Shockers, go Shockers.
That's right. They're coming back. Randy, we appreciate it. There goes Randy Burns, the latest Wichita Sports Hall of Fame inductee. A nice reminder of just the many generations of great Shockers and in great Shocker basketball. That's cool, Paul, to get him that first induction into a Hall of Fame like that.
Would you have guessed that? I mean, would you have guessed that we would be the first? You know, I figured in high school,
I don't know,
somewhere along the line he would be in some other Hall of Fame. But what an honor to be his first.
And cool to hear that he was, and he still wears it as a badge of honor, right? It's kind of a Wichita State thing.
Right.
The most under-recruited player, knowing that, and, you know, play angry, right? That's what it's all about. All right, 869-1240. We're going to come back. Our buddy Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider, will join us in our next segment. He's stirring up a hornet's nest. It's kind of Tim's thing. We'll talk to him about that. Want to get to the latest in realignment with him as well, with some of the ACC rumblings we've heard lately. That's what happens when we turn the page on Sports Daily and go into hour number 2. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily, hour number 2 coming your way. Congratulations to Randy Burns on his Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction. Former Shocker great. Very cool stuff. Our appreciation to Chelsea Messenger for joining us to talk a little betting with a wide variety of things happening. You can go back on the Odyssey app and listen to those if you missed either one of them. We're coming into hour number 2. Appreciate everybody listening. IHOP hotline 869-1240. We appreciate everybody watching on the video stream as well, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We turn our attention now to the world of K-State sports. Sort of. We're probably going to get into a lot of other things with our guest next. Tim Fitzgerald joining Sports Daily. Jad, hit it.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, Fitz, welcome in again this week. And I suppose as a K-State guy, as a K-State writer, you're not properly doing your job unless you're poking the bear a little bit, taking jabs at the KU side of things, right? You sort of have an obligation here to these things.
I am a seeker of the truth. You know me.
Yeah, I know. All right, so you're going to have to set this up because I read up You've started a conversation, we'll call it, about the funding of things in athletics, and you've got issue with potentially public dollars going to help build athletic facilities at KU. KU would counter that it's not the actual athletic facilities, if I understand this all correctly, that the money is being used for. What's in play here, and what is your issue that you've chose to jump on the side of here?
Well, KU has unveiled a $330 million project. One project. And it does have multiple purposes. I admit that, but it is one project. And one of those purposes, and I would say that these purposes are symbiotic in the fact that they don't survive as a project without the other, at least at this point. I think they should be separate, but they're not. They need to renovate and fix up their football stadium to the best degree possible, and I think we all agree on that. And that's not a shot at KU. It just has fallen by the wayside in their things to do, and football hasn't been a priority. It's becoming a priority with Lance Leipold, and they better make it a priority because they want to hang on to that guy. I think all of us want to see him stay there because it's really good for football in the state of Kansas. But this project also was going to build a, quote, gateway to the campus that might include a hotel, convention center, doctor's offices, freestanding businesses. There's some other things in there. And I find both these projects completely fine. Except within this project now, Kansas has been awarded two separate, as it turns out. When I started this, I only thought there was one $50 million gift of taxpayer money. But there's actually two totaling $85 million. Now, these are, as it turns out, federal monies allocated by the state. So if you're parsing it, it's not state tax revenue, but in some form it is tax revenue. And since the state taxpayers pay it at the federal pot, you can say it's also Kansas revenue. My problem is athletic facilities, athletic endeavors should not be receiving grants. In this era of funding, shortage of funding for higher education, spending those tax dollars on anything related to sports is kind of unsettling to me. And I think the best solution here is just uncouple these two into two different projects. Make one about the stadium and take the bonds and build your gateway. But I think we know the truth is they can't raise the money for the stadium alone, so they have to kind of do this shell game of moving money around and saying that this will only go to this part of the project, but that's not really how it works. If it's your 21st birthday, Jacob, and you have $40 in your pocket, and mom gives you a $20 and says, "Don't drink with this, go eat dinner," you go eat dinner with that out of $20, and then you got $40 still in your pocket to go drink with. Did mom not pay for drinks? Did she? Yeah, she did. She just kind of shell gamed it through to make her feel better. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And Kansas State University athletics is completely free of taxpayer money. They completely function with their own revenues and donor revenues when it comes time to build things and do projects. And I think that's the way it should be in this current environment of higher education.
So Fitz, I'll admit I don't know the inner workings of all of this, and I'm not well versed in the way that taxes work at this sort of level and grants and how it's allocated and all of that. My only question is, and I get the point that you're making. My only question is it a little bit different? At least in my mind, I'm thinking it might be a little bit different if there are grants that are being that have already been allocated in a certain way. They're already there. Is it a kind of a use it or lose it situation with these grants that are being allocated? Is that different than going to the taxpayers and having them potentially vote on using their tax dollars to renovate a stadium? How do those two things correlate with each other?
Well, this funding is part of Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan Act. They gave it states X amount of dollars, and the states get to decide what to do with it. This came to my attention, really. I knew K-Staters were upset about it, but I hadn't touched it until I read an article in the UDK, the student paper, and it was an outside group writing in the UDK, but they made great points, and it struck a nerve. In the fact that there's so many needs on campus, why is the university chancellor getting this funding for convention center? Now, granted, the idea is tourism dollars, and I get that. I have no problem with the project separate from athletics at all, but they do make a valid point. The Board of Regents says it is short $1.2 billion in infrastructure needs across all of the college campuses in the state of Kansas. And this year they've allocated $45 million across the system to help address those needs. And yet another yet $85 million that was available to the state is not going to that. It's going to build a hotel and doctor's offices. Honestly, stuff that sounds like commercial enterprises that should be done with investor money, not state money.
We're talking with Tim Fitzgerald, publisher at GoPowerCat.com. And I think, Tim, at the surface of this, and you can follow along on Twitter and everywhere Tim's discussing it, but it does bring up some interesting just dynamics that we live in now. Kansas Board of Regents yesterday, basically across the state, up around 5% in tuition, about 5% per semester, right? So what it boils down to, generally speaking, and looking at some numbers, an average semester of KU or K-State College is about $5,000. So $10,000 a year, $40,000 over a 4-year education. Again, these are ballpark numbers. There's about 20,000 students at KU. That's $800 million of revenue generated through tuition for one class of students. $800 million. And we're being told tuition needs to raise. And I have kids, and that is terrifying to me that times 3, I've got to think about $120,000 to educate these kids. How do you not have a responsibility to operate within a budget of $800 million? That's just from tuition. Just from tuition. That doesn't include all the other stuff that generates money on campus. This isn't a KU thing. This isn't a K-State thing. This isn't a Wichita State thing. It's like pull our hair. Like the things that people, get upset about with college. And I'm with you. Like if it's privately raised, great. Like that's what it needs to be. But to talk about these projects, I don't care if it's state or federal, it's taxpayer money, but then come back yesterday across the board and tell us there needs to be a 5% tuition increase. How about find a way to make up, your budget by 5%, right? Like this blows my mind that universities operate this way and we just roll over and take it. It's wild to me.
Yeah, and the whole situation is bizarre. First of all, I think we need a serious audit of all the campuses. They do have a lot of money. Has the administrative class grown so much on campuses that it's impacting the educational value? I don't know. All I know is, someone said, well, Kansas State's used state funding in the past. Well, first of all, Kansas State used bonds, which aren't grants. Bonds are loans that you have to repay. Those bonds helped build Bramlage Coliseum. Well, Bramlage Coliseum was built right after I was out of college in 1988. And if I recall, I might have drank a lot in college, but if I recall, my tuition was about somewhere between $500 and $1,000 a semester. Now, I'm old, but not that old where the cost of education has gone up that much, because I can honestly say I don't think the quality of education has gone up dramatically. I don't understand quite what's going on here. I just would prefer to see a more focused approach on trying to rescue our college campuses instead of taking bond money and just plunging it into a commercial product, let alone the fact that the stadium needs renovation. It desperately does. And at the end of the day, Kansas has issues, the University of, raising money for football needs. It's been an ongoing issue. I get it. It's a basketball-driven school, but it's something that needs to be fixed. And now's the perfect time. You don't want to lose Lance Leipold. You just don't.
Yeah, and I would be the first to say that there have been, quite a bit of issues and challenges over the years in raising the money to renovate that stadium. And I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that there's language in Lance Leipold's contract that the university will make a good faith effort to renovate that stadium by a certain period of time. Otherwise, he then is able to go and pursue other coaching opportunities. I wonder, Fitz, with all of this, the motivation of the University of Kansas in this entire project, how does the conference realignment discussion play into this? Is this a by any means necessary get this done to not be left behind as we're talking about where schools are potentially looking at landing? And is it basically a situation in your mind where you're saying they're just trying to grab the money from wherever they possibly can, whether it be from private donors, from federal grant dollars, state dollars, whatever that looks like? Is it just an attempt to try to make sure they're not left in the dust?
I don't know what the psychology behind this at KU is. This is purely a guess. My guess is they knew they needed to supplement the greater pool of money. It's like $335 million. That's a big project. That's a lot of donor money. And, the fact that the stadium needs renovation, it desperately does. And at the end of the day, Kansas has issues. The University of, raising money for football needs. Been an ongoing issue. I get it. The and it's hard to do it once. That's again why I think they should be two separate projects. And the fact they aren't two separate projects tells me they just knew they couldn't quite get that money on their own for football. So let's get donors to give money for the greater project and tell them 85 million is already in the can for the gateway. And they can feel like they're giving to the gateway. The grand entrance for the University of Kansas with shops and, maybe bars and restaurants, and not just for the football stadium. It's hard to figure out exactly why this was lumped all as one project, because Kansas State has avoided doing that. They have a Campus Edge project right now that I believe is partially state funded. It's helping the ag department buildings that are across the street from the football stadium. So the street improvements actually do impact athletics, but they were never built into any kind of athletic budget. The whole training, the indoor practice facility, the new Olympic training facility, the new volleyball arena, what's going to be the indoor track facility, that's all been funded by donations and Big 12 revenues. And that's the way it should be. And in fact, Kansas State, they've actually given money back to the university in the past, athletics to the academic side, and they currently are one of 8 institutions not accepting any federal or student funding of the athletic department. And guys, that's the way every athletic department should be. You are making so much honking money off of these contracts as a power autonomous 5 team, and you take any outside funding, shame on you. Live within your budget.
Yeah, I live within your budget. This isn't even to me a K-State or KU thing. It's just like a philosophical thing.
Right.
And I want, we see cities, it's not just universities that deal with these challenges. It's cities, do cities build downtown ballparks, and how much of that burden needs to come on to taxpayers? But I just take a loan and if things go well, for KU football for 2 or 3 years, this is going to be a non-starter raising that kind of money, because that's the impact of it. That's why coaches make so much money. That's why, universities want to have these facilities and do these things. So why not, like the rest of us, if I want a new house, I got to go take a loan out for it. And, maybe I do that because I got a new job and my income increases and I'm using, I just don't understand why we operate this way for such revenue generating, industries, which college sports, pro sports, whatever it is. Like, why is this even a discussion? Why aren't these things just all privately funded all the time across college, pro, whatever? Like, what are we doing?
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I don't quite understand why we're in this situation. K-State runs on very administrators, less staff. They got a remarkable social media team that is probably staffed at half the levels of most Big 12 institutions. So they make the most of what they can with what they have. They live within the budget. It wasn't always that way at Kansas State, but more athletic departments need to be that way. And let's just say this: if you're a member of the Big Ten and SEC, pounding your chest about your great membership in this conference that pays you so much money out of media rights, and you're still taking any student or state money, shame on you. That's ridiculous. That's irresponsible. That's grotesque. Just live by your own means.
Yeah. Real quick, Tommy, I think there's one story that makes this a little bit, dangerous, right? Like we see, and Sports Illustrated just did a big dive, and I'm about halfway through it, on the Brett Favre situation at Mississippi State. Like, when you try to blend, politics and fundraising and everything with it's a slippery slope, and too many bad things can happen. And then we hear about tuition increases of 5% across the board, across the state. Like, that's tough. That is a tough pill to swallow for me.
Yeah. And look, one area, Fitz, I know you mentioned, Kansas State conservative with their money, which is absolutely true. One area where they are spending is contracts for coaches. Chris Kleiman finalized his contract with the university, just a few days ago. I know we talked about it last week when it was still pending and the discussions were going on, waiting for the signatures. But what's your overall take on the contract, the terms of that deal, and what that looks like for the university?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good number. It's not an outrageous number in terms of K-State's budget. It's something certainly that they can handle. $5.5 million a year, an 8-year contract, on average $5.5 million. Look, this contract will never see the end of it. Some of the teeth of it comes out of place after 3 years. The buyout drops from $6 million to $3 million, and I think that means this is the window where K-State will go back and renegotiate, because in 3 years, $5.5 million probably chump change in the coaching profession. We know how much that's growing. But if you're a K-Stater, there's something in there that needs to concern you about these buyouts. Gene Taylor, the outstanding athletics director at Kansas State, who has taken risk here in hiring a guy like Chris Kleiman, who some people thought was just hiring his buddy. Well, he did hire his buddy. They are incredibly close. And Chris Kleiman's made it known that he'll be the coach at Kansas State as long as Gene Taylor's there. Well, there's a clause in the contract. If Gene Taylor leaves, whether to a new job or retirement, or President Richard Linton leaves for whatever reason, that buyout drops to $1 million. And that gives Chris Kleiman an easy exit out at that point. So I think that is the one concerning thing in this contract for K-State fans is, does Kleiman have an easy out once Gene Taylor steps down? Or heaven forbid, Gene Taylor becomes the AD at Iowa, because Chris Kleiman will be right in on his heels, because that's their school. And it's hard to deny them that opportunity if it comes up.
Well, that's certainly an interesting wrinkle to that I didn't know about. All right, Fitz. Well, don't tweet and drive, please. Wait till you get through and need to kill some time and treatments before you go stirring it up again.
I'm always on the road, going to see a doctor, going to do things to me that I don't want done to me. Cancer's not nearly as fun as they said it would be. Oh, it'll be fun. You meet new people. I don't know. It's just not working out.
It's never up to the hype, is it? Fitz, we're thinking about you. Good luck with the treatments. Let's do it again next week. And I'll talk to you. By the way, I'll talk to Fitz on what day is that, Fitz? What did we say? Sunday, CBS Sports Radio nationally. I want to get your take on ACC stuff. So Fitz and I will chat on Sunday here across the country. So if you want any of those shenanigans, you can hear him coast to coast. You can find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz. You can find his work always at gopowercat.com. Fitz, drive safe. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, boys.
There goes Tim Fitzgerald, a K-State insider. An interesting topic of discussion. I don't, for me, it's more philosophical across the country when we get into some of those funding things and issues, and then, oh, hey, they say they need to, tuition needs to jump up 5%. Okay. All right, great. Sounds great. As I have 3 young kids who I hope have the ability to be highly educated. Maybe not if prices keep increasing. Can you homeschool in college?
I don't think so, but they could always join the circus.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. We'll consider it, or maybe sane minds will prevail in the next decade. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Savage will rejoin us. We'll continue on Sports Daily on this Thursday edition.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Thursdays are always wild and crazy. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. We welcome back in Paul Savage here in our second hour. Glad to be with you, whether it's on KFH, on the radio, on our video streams, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All available for you right now. IHOP hotline is open here. 869-1240 is that number to call. Fellas, let's look ahead to tonight's game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. The Eastern Conference Finals delivered, much like the Western Conference Finals in Game 1. I think we expected it out of the Western Conference Finals, and I would expect it again tonight. We've had a little more time to digest it, Tommy, yesterday on, who feels better after Game 1? Obviously, Denver won the game, so they feel good, but the Lakers aren't worried. Doesn't it feel like there's some pressure on Denver tonight to win this Game 2, as tight as Game 1 was? Despite the fact that Denver offensively played lights out for most of that game, they don't want to give up home court advantage here, right? It feels pretty daunting to me for them to pick up this win. If the Lakers get the 1-1 split here, I think there's reason for concern if you're Denver.
I don't want to go that far. We've been heaping on pressure over and over and over again on Denver. And every time we heap pressure on them, and say, man, their backs are up against the wall, or we're not sure they're going to be able to do it. All they've done is just handle their business and win. That's what they do. They handle their business. They go to work and they get victories. And there's a reason why they're the 1 seed in the West. There's a reason why, I think that they will be the NBA champion when it's all said and done. So of course, there's pressure. You're at home. You want to go up 2-0 before you hit the road to LA. I totally understand that. But I think that the overall pressure is less tonight than it was going into Game 1. They needed to get Game 1. They needed to jump ahead 1-0. Losing that first game at home, that would have been disastrous for Denver. But I'm not ready to say there's more pressure or even the same amount of pressure on their shoulders right now going into Game 2 as there was in Game 1.
And I asked that question. It is sort of a silly exercise. There's probably equitable pressure every time at this level, at this stage, and with this on the line, Paul, that, the pressure exists for both teams because they're both trying to win every game. Do you look for trends in this series now, Paul, after seeing Game 1, or should we just attack this thing like as a series, like of one game, a series of 1 game series, right? Because I think trends are sort of out the window from what we saw in Game 1, because what we thought might be trends didn't really manifest the way that we thought they would. So can we just take this as 1 game and not worry too much about the big picture here and just treat it that way?
I think you're onto something there. Every game's an individual war. So this is basically 7 wars that will all be played within, a 10 or 15-day period of time. So, every game is going to be a war. There's film. There's knowledge about the other team. Every game that you play, you learn something about the strengths, the weaknesses of the other team. And here's the problem. If you are playing a team like the Lakers and you're Denver, the problem is this is a team you had them down by 20 plus points, and you let them back to within 3 several times. That's a worry. That's a worry. So you make those adjustments. You figure out what you do. Is Denver the better team? Well, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, you sure have some star power with the Lakers. Now, how old that is, how fragile that star power is, AD is basically not game to game. He's a trip up the floor to trip up the floor. That's where AD is. So I kind of still think it's a Denver deal to lose, but boy, nothing would surprise me. You got a guy like LeBron who is basically willing this team on his back. I don't know, but I would go with Denver as well. And of course, with Miami, man, I'll tell you what, give those guys props. Give those guys props with what they're doing at this point. I'm not sure I had them in the finals, let alone winning the finals and going to the NBA championship. But, man, it's a possibility. It's a possibility because the way the Celtics played, or I should say the way the Celtics were forced to play, because of the way the Miami Heat played is a thing of beauty. It's a thing to it's why we watch these games at this time of the year. But they're still coaching, they're still adjusting. There's all kinds of things going on. Advantage Denver. I hate to say this because I think Tommy, you are on the Celtics still. I think I'm kind of with Jacob. I think I'm kind of switching over to Miami. I think they may have the advantage.
You know what's interesting, Tommy? Like, are we giving the Lakers enough credit for
No.
just how unreal it is that they're here? They had essentially the same regular season record as Miami. We had them dead to rights before the trade deadline. And I think it's because they have LeBron James on the team and to some degree Anthony Davis, that we're not giving them the same sort of credit that Miami's getting right now, and just how unlikely this run is as far as seeding and regular season. But it's on par, right? And we almost have, and again, I think it's because of the star power, but we all talked about it before these series started. Like, we were more excited about the Western Conference Finals, but you have an almost identical dynamic that exists both places, right? Denver, Boston, two regular season juggernauts going up against teams that we didn't even know if they'd be playoff teams, who have gotten hot at the right time. I mean, it is almost identical. And in Miami and the Lakers have had equally impressive runs to get to this point. I don't know that the Lakers are getting the same sort of underdog credit that Miami's getting at this point.
Well, because the Lakers, just by virtue of who they are, who's on their roster, the market they're in, where they're located, their brand identity, all of that, it's really, really difficult to characterize the Lakers as underdogs. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It doesn't matter. I mean, literally, because they are the Lakers, it's really hard to have, in the same breath, say the Lakers and underdogs at the same time. So, but perception is reality, right? So it doesn't necessarily always matter what the seeding is, or, how it happened in the regular season or whatever. It's really hard, to characterize them as underdogs, even though their seeding would say that they are, and the way that they played, has been.
Yeah, Tommy, hold on just a second here, buddy. Look, you got a team that barely made it into the playoffs. They are an underdog. They are a 7th seed. Tommy, this is a team that most people halfway through the season thought would never even make the playoffs. This is an underdog.
With a couple geriatric superstars leading the way.
Yeah, well.
But look, I think that there is a lot, and I'm not, discounting the effort that the Lakers made after the trade deadline to get into the playoffs. But the team that they were at the beginning of the season and the team that they are now are two completely different teams, right? And so, you take the overall body of work into play. But I would say that, and we talked about this before, Jacob, that where the Lakers stand right now in the playoffs, they were incredibly underseeded out of 7. Now, again, that's the overall body of work at play. That's what they did at the beginning of the year before the trade deadline, when it was a mess, right? But the way the roster is built right now, if they had that roster from day one and they played the way that they are now at the beginning of the season, they're not a 7 seed. So I think that comes into it, right? Don't you think?
Is Miami an 8 seed under the same circumstance, right? Like, I
did
think
Miami go out and make, all the changes that the Lakers made at the trade deadline?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. Did they make moves? I don't know. I just know what we're seeing now is, it looks like they were pretty quiet at the trade deadline. I think it's what makes the NBA so difficult. The regular season and the postseason are such different things, right? What we see in the regular season and what we see in the postseason are such different things. And I think the reality of the situation is the Lakers and the Heat are probably not as far behind the field as perception is playing itself out.
Look, on top of that, also, we talked about it in the first hour about, what would happen if a 7 and an 8 seed faced off in the NBA finals. But I think we can take it a step further and say that in the NBA, probably more than any other sport in the playoffs, the seeding is probably more irrelevant in the NBA playoffs.
But it hasn't
than
always
any
been
other-
that way.
you're right, but I'm saying right now, the seeding is more irrelevant than any other playoffs in professional sports, right?
Maybe.
Like, we're talking about, because I agree with you that the Lakers and the Heat are not as far behind the 1 and 2 and whatever. Like, there's more parity there, than I think there used to be when you get down to the bottom seeds. So I think that really I think you have to throw seeding out the window because of the way that teams are dealing with load management and all of that. Like, the regular season doesn't matter as much.
So this is an interesting point. A quick search in a site called Fadeaway World in a story that they did last year. They did the champions by seed, and the number one seed of the NBA playoffs, win one conference or the other, has won the title historically 67% of the time. The number 2 seed, another 21%.
Wow.
So after that, 3 seeds or lower have only won titles. Again, this is according to Fadeaway World, and this is a quick search, so I'm going to trust them here for the sake of this discussion happening on the Spur. 10% of the time. 10% of the time. That's it, historically, that lower than a 2 seed has won an NBA title. So my problem for a long time in the NBA was in the postseason that the first 2 rounds sort of felt irrelevant, right? Like, what are we even wasting our time with these first 2 rounds? At least the first round. But that is not the case. And I don't know how long it's felt this way to me. Probably since, I think 3, maybe 4 years now, where I just remember watching, and it was Donovan Mitchell that really jumped off the screen. It was the year Utah and Phoenix jumped off the screen with these young stars. And I'm like, man, some of these teams with these young stars are really good. And you could see a path when it was Booker and Mitchell, I believe. So that maybe they're coming out parties in that postseason. And it was sort of the shift away from the Warriors super team. So it was right there in that sweet spot. And I think we're seeing an evolution in the NBA. And I don't know whether it has to do with load management in the regular season, watering that down, where the truly great teams don't seem as great by the records like they always have because stars sit out so often now in the NBA. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's an off year. I don't know.
That's part of it. I think it's load management. It's load management, number 1. And then I also think it's tanking, number 2. Like, I think you've got some skewed records when you got teams, Dallas was the team that everybody pointed at this season because they were fairly open about it, right?
Yeah, they tanked 1 game.
But what I'm saying is that I think that there are some skewed records because of both of those things, where that's where, you're seeding the playoffs based on your regular season record. Is it really accurate? Do you feel confident? And I don't know. I mean, look at where we are in both conference finals. A 7 seed is in one and an 8 seed is in the other. It's not a bad thing, but I'm just not sure that seeding is incredibly accurate. And this might be a trend in years to come in the NBA.
Well, their records show what the trend should be. I mean, and where they should be seated. And by the way, Chelsea, who we our guru when it comes to betting and all things that are betting, would probably be chastising us at this very moment for taking or picking a team that's ranked 7th or ranked 3rd or 8th in the seeding process for this championship. She'd look at this and say, and I'm so appreciative you found that site right in the middle of this conversation, Jacob, with regards to only 10% of teams from a 3 seed or down have won a championship in the NBA. I'm
pretty sure she's taking the heat.
Yeah.
She is taking the heat. So the trend, and she is trends, and betting is trends, and I think the trends are showing now that.
Well, hold on.
Like you gotta almost start a second season here and look at the Heat, not based on the regular season, but based on this postseason.
Smart money was taken opposite that, though. I mean, and you can have trends, and trends are a funny thing. Trends can be emotional. Trends can be, they can be basically whatever you want it to be. But
that's you say it's funny. You say it's emotional, but both of you guys are like, well, after game 1, we're going to lean on the Heat, and I'm the one that's saying the Celtics are they're still the number 1 seed for a reason, right? Number 2 seed for a reason.
Yeah, but the Heat have taken down the 1 seed and just keep doing this. So at some point, it's like, all right, you can slam me in the head with it as many times as you want. The Heat, if they keep getting 8.5 points the way they're
I'm
playing,
clearly the only logical one. I'm the only one that's saying, yeah, the chalk is still probably the play with
but
both
is
Miami.
the chalk the play? Is the chalk the play if you're going to give 8.5 points?
I think in game 2, yeah, I think Boston is pretty pissed off after game 1. I'm leaning the chalk on. I'm leaving the chalk on both series right now, to be honest with you.
I don't know what to do. I don't know. I haven't been betting them because I've been so wrong in trying to predict outcomes and margins and all those things. Like I'm not.
I'm the only logical one on this show. Who would have thought it?
Logical one, Jake.
There's no logic. There's a 7 and an 8 seed in the conference finals. That's not logical. Logic tells you that they shouldn't be there. It is what it is. I don't know why.
Logic tells you that the chalk should beat both the 7 and the 8 pretty handily.
They should. Will they? I'm with you in half of it. I think I'm starting to consider a Denver Heat game 1 winner. No. I don't know what to do. We'll find out after tonight. I reserve the right to change my mind every day on the show throughout the conference playoffs. Let's come back and wrap this thing up. We'll tell you what's on tap today as Sports Daily finishes on a Thursday. All right, let's go in 3, 2. Turn a loss into a win. BetMGM, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, plays a same-game parlay wager with at least 4 legs on any MLB game. If all legs of the parlay hit but one, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $25. Only at BetMGM, the place to bet on baseball. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus. Kansas only. New and existing customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Thank you. All right, welcome back in, everybody. What's on tap today? Well, we've got Jim Rome following us at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Maggie and Perloff at 4, Wichita State baseball at UCF on KFH. So we'll get that. All right, fellas, we make our way through this. I don't know I don't know how to bet these things in the NBA playoffs. By the way, a nugget that just came in a little bit ago. I just saw this. It came last night, I think. Kelvin Sampson becomes the latest name to join Milwaukee's wide-ranging search at the University of Houston. That's interesting. That's a job that we know Adrian Griffin has been interviewed for, but as Houston makes a transition into the Big 12, how terrified would you be right now if you're the University of Houston, Tommy, to lose Kelvin Sampson potentially?
Well, I think that's a big blow. I mean, Sampson was planning on, assuming he doesn't, get an NBA job and stays with Houston, the plan was to have him help shepherd Houston into the Big 12 from the American. And he's a big reason why, the Cougars basketball program has gotten to the point that it's at right now. And I think a huge, catalyst as to why that university is moving from the American to the Big 12. So if he bolts for the NBA, that's got to be a massive blow to Houston and their debut into the Big 12.
Paul, I think it's unlikely that Sampson would get this job. He's never been an NBA head coach. He was an assistant in Milwaukee, I believe, and that's his NBA experience. I would say it's unlikely. But the fact that it's happening at all is really interesting because I never would have seen that. I've always thought of Sampson as a college guy. Seems like a right off into the sunset at Houston kind of guy. Maybe if you're Kelvin Sampson, this is an opportunity to get maybe a raise or a contract extension. I just don't. I mean, I get it. Giannis is there. Like, if you're going to take an NBA job, this is a great one to take because you got Giannis. Like, that's built in no matter what. But how likely do you feel like it is, even if he's interviewing, that Sampson would get a job like this?
I think it's darn good. I think it's darn proper that he would want a job like this. Now, not every NBA team he's going to look at and say, oh, this is a good fit for me. That's the NBA. No, but you got Giannis, and you take that job because Giannis can take you to where you want to be over the course of the next 5 years, which may be all he wants to coach in his lifetime. So this is a scare for Houston only because it's Milwaukee, not because it's anybody else. Milwaukee.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, the only other thing to keep in mind in this, Houston, this could be a big play for them to give Sampson a nice little raise as they get into the Big 12.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's
my thought too.
Yep, there you go.
Or maybe put a little pressure to get his son hired. I mean, there's that element there too. All right, we'll come back. We'll tell you what's coming up on the show tomorrow and get this Thursday wrapped up. Been a fun Thursday, Sports Daily. One more segment coming up.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Apple Message and data rates and numbers.
All right, let's go in 3, 2, 1. Turn a loss into a win with BetMGM, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Place a same-game parlay wager with at least 4 legs on any MLB game. If all legs of the parlay hit but one, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $25. Again, you can place the same-game parlay wager, 4 legs on any MLB game. If all of those legs hit but one, you'll get that stake back in bonus bets, and it's up to $25. It's only at BetMGM, the best place to bet on baseball. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus, Kansas only. New and existing customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. All right.
And around the world, we're innovating, leading, and hiring A&P mechanics and more. Receive up to a $2,500 sign-on bonus, competitive pay, health, dental, vision, and life insurance, 401k, paid vacation, and more. We offer a family atmosphere, creative culture, and the opportunity to advance in your career. Join the Yingling Aviation team and grow with us. All positions, apply online today at yinglingaviation.com while openings are still available.
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing, together millions of things for our planet. Serving with the Great Plains Nature Center is an opportunity packed with adventure, exploration, and free family fun, including interactive events, animal care, trail cleanup, children's programs, and more. There are volunteer opportunities for everyone. Located at 29th of Woodlawn, they're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5, while park trails are open dawn to dusk. Find your place at the Great Plains Nature Center on social media and at gpnc.org.
Menards is your one-stop shop for all your pet and wildlife supply needs. Plus, it's all 11% off. Give your feathered friends a treat with Enchanted Garden Premium Bird Food. Choose from a 20-pound bag of peanuts or wild finch mints for just $19.99 after 11% rebate at Menards. Good through May 21st. Savings are a mail-in rebate. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Hello, I'm Howard Mackler, founder of Innovation Refunds. You've heard me talking about the payroll tax refund for months. I'm so proud that we've helped over 15,000 businesses claim over $5 billion in cash incentives. If you own a business, even if you've asked your CPA about this, you owe it to yourself to take another look. Every client is assigned a licensed and insured tax attorney who evaluates your company at my expense to accurately determine eligibility. Innovation Refunds has hundreds of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot and Google, and your business might be entitled to receive up to $26,000 per employee. Businesses of all types can qualify, including medical, professional, construction, even nonprofits. Please don't miss out on this. Even your doctor would tell you to get an expert second opinion, and we do a lot of work for doctors. Download the Innovation Refunds app now or go to getrefunds.com to potentially get a payroll tax refund of $26,000 per employee. GetRefunds.com. GetRefunds.com.
Visit Maximum Outdoor Equipment and Service in Andover for your Steel outdoor power tools this season. From legendary chainsaws and dependable trimmers to powerful blowers, hard-working hedge trimmers, power washers, sprayers, and more. Steel is designed for reliability and built for the long haul. Stop by Maximum Outdoor's newest location in Andover, your authorized local Steel dealer for your outdoor power tool needs. South of 21st and Andover Road or MaximumOutdoor.com.
Outdoor equipment.
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
College baseball, only 3 games remain in the regular season for Wichita State. Shockers heading down to Orlando for a matchup with Central Florida. The Shockers and the Knights. Mike Kennedy and Denning Gehrig have live coverage of Shocker baseball at 4:40 on Thursday afternoon, right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, everybody, that was a fun Thursday. Our thanks to Tim Fitzgerald. Our thanks to Randy Burns. Our thanks to Chelsea Messenger. If you missed anything, you can go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app. Just search KFH. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the video stream. You can go back and watch those, too. Another way to take in the program if you didn't. We're going to wrap up this week tomorrow. Can't wait to talk about Game 2 of the NBA Finals. Hope it lives up to Game 1. For Tommy Castor, for Paul Savage, for Jad Chambers, I'm Jacob Albracht. We'll wrap up the week with you tomorrow on another edition of Sports Daily.
Sports, later news, and